my name is Susan and I'm here to share my family's experience with epilepsy. It is a story that spans 3 generations. It is a story of resilience, hope, heartbreak and ultimately loss. Most importantly, it is the story of my beautiful daughter Lauren. So my journey started when I was a child. My mother had epilepsy, and from a very young age, I knew what to do when she had a seizure. I knew where her medication was and how to help. Although she only had a handful of seizures during my childhood, I clearly remember her asking me never to tell anybody because she was terrified of losing her licence. So we lived in a rural community where a car wasn't a luxury, it was a necessity. The nearest town was an hour away, and specialist care simply wasn't available. Mum relied almost entirely on her local GP because seeing a neurologist just wasn't realistic. Years later, I found myself reliving that experience, but this time as a mother. When my eldest daughter was 11, she had her first tonic-clonic seizure. There was no warning, no trigger. She had simply been baking with her grandmother. We were told that there was nothing we could really do until she had more seizures. And as a parent, those words are incredibly difficult to hear. You live in a constant state of waiting, wondering if today will be the day that it happens again. Eventually, she was diagnosed with epilepsy, started medication, and thankfully became seizure-free. And today, she continues to live a healthy, seizure-free life. We thought that chapter in our lives was behind us. But then in 2020, the day after her 17th birthday, our youngest daughter, Lauren, had her first tonic-clonic seizure, again with no warning. She had simply been sitting in the lounge room watching a movie. After further seizures and numerous tests, Lauren was diagnosed with epilepsy. She was started on medication, but unfortunately suffered an allergic reaction and had to begin the difficult process of trying different medications. Living in regional Queensland, we had access to only 2 neurologists. Neither specialised in epilepsy or paediatric care. Although specialist epilepsy services existed elsewhere, that option was never discussed with us. And as parents, we couldn't believe that we were facing this journey again. But this time was different because Lauren was just beginning adulthood. She was finishing school, learning to drive, planning further study, dreaming about travelling, finding work and building the future every young person deserves. Watching those dreams suddenly become uncertain was heartbreaking. Lauren was everything that you could hope for in a daughter. She was bubbly, kind, fiercely determined, incredibly funny, and had the most wonderfully sarcastic sense of humour. She was a country girl through and through. She loved life on the farm, showing cattle, playing football, and taking on every challenge that came her way. Over the next 4 years, Lauren tried medication after medication in hope of finding seizure control. But each one brought new side effects: anxiety, depression, weight gain, constant fatigue, headaches, nausea, sleep problems. And through it all, her seizures remained completely unpredictable. She had no warning signs, no triggers, no way of knowing when the next seizure would happen. Despite everything, Lauren refused to let epilepsy define her. She earned her driver's licence knowing that every seizure meant losing it again, and sometimes for 6 months, sometimes for a year. And for a young person, losing that independence over and over again is devastating. But Lauren kept going. She spoke openly about her epilepsy. She wanted people to understand that living with epilepsy was really like. And as a family, we were determined that epilepsy would not stop her from chasing her dreams. When Lauren started her first job, it was a 40-minute drive from our home. Because there was no public transport where we live, family members spent around 3 hours a day driving her to and from work. We did this because that's what families do. We were fortunate that Lauren had supportive employers. But despite her determination, working full-time simply wasn't possible. Between medication side effects, the anxiety of wondering whether another seizure might happen, the recovery afterwards, there were days she could physically just not get out of bed. And what broke my heart most was hearing her apologise. She would tell me how sorry she was that she couldn't work more, sorry that she couldn't be like everyone else. No young person should feel that they have to apologise for living with a medical condition. One of the biggest lessons our family has learned is that epilepsy doesn't just affect the person diagnosed, it affects everyone who loves them. It is watching someone you love have a seizure and feeling completely helpless. It is waiting for them to regain consciousness, seeing the confusion in their eyes, hearing them apologise because they know how frightened you are, and then watching them realise that they've lost their licence again, or another job opportunity, or another piece of independence. And as a parent, there is nothing harder than watching your child suffer when you would give absolutely everything to take that pain away. Then in 2024, everything seemed to be changing. Lauren had been seizure-free for 15 months. She got a licence back. She was applying for her dream jobs of Jillaroo or a governess, and for the first time in years, we could genuinely believe that we were turning a corner. We believed her epilepsy was finally under control. Then on the 4th of April, everything changed. Lauren went to bed that night and she never woke up. We had lost our beautiful daughter, our best friend, the light of our family. Lauren died from a sudden unexplained death in epilepsy. SUDEP. She was only 20 years old, just 2 months shy of her 21st birthday. What has made our grief even harder is discovering afterwards that Lauren was considered to be a high risk of SUDEP, yet no doctor or specialist had ever spoken to us about it. The first time many families hear the word SUDEP is when they read it on a post-mortem report, and that should never happen. I cannot say that knowing about SUDEP would have saved Lauren, but I also cannot say that it wouldn't have. Families deserve the opportunity to have those conversations. They deserve informed choices and they deserve honesty. And that is why I'm here today. I am Lauren's voice. I promised after losing her that if I ever had the opportunity to stand before decision makers and tell her story, that if it meant another family might be spared this heartbreak, I would do it. Today, I am keeping my promise. Together with close family friends, we have created a 35-metre road train wrapped in purple, carrying Lauren's smiling face alongside information about epilepsy and SUDEP. What began as a tribute has become something much bigger. Every kilometre it travels, it starts conversations. It raises awareness. It reminds Australians that epilepsy is far more than seizures. Through Loz's legacy, we have now raised almost $89,000, with the majority dedicated to SUDEP research. Lauren's legacy continues to save lives by starting conversations that many families never get to have. My greatest hope is simple: that Lauren is remembered, that more Australians understand the realities of epilepsy, that every person diagnosed receives the best possible care, including honest conversations about SUDEP, and that no parent ever has to discover this condition only after losing their child. Because epilepsy affects far more than the person living with it. It affects families, it affects futures, it affects every dream that should have been. And if Lauren's story can lead to greater awareness, better education, improved specialist care, and more research, then her legacy will continue to make a difference. Thank you.